One last time, can we make sure that I'm in center?
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
My name is Anita Nainen, and I am chairperson of the Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, also known as GIACC. Welcome to all our attendees and our expert panel of bankers from Quantum National Bank, and of course, our board members who have also joined this webinar. I'd like to say a few words about our chamber. We are over 20 years old, and our primary focus is to promote and foster business opportunities between India and the United States, most importantly and specifically the state of Georgia. We achieved this through our various networking events for our membership, as well as hosting delegations to and from India. We partner very closely with the Indian Consulate General of Atlanta. We also collaborate with other chambers locally. Most recently, we have signed an MOU with the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce and the Korean American Chamber of Commerce. Internationally, we have an MOU with the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, which has pan-India chapters in several metro cities, including Mumbai, Chennai, Pune, and Hyderabad. In terms of our programming, as you all know, we all had to go virtual last year. However, we were very successful in launching and holding webinars on a COVID-related series discussing the impact of COVID on various areas, including immigration, travel, tourism, workplace integration, and the medical consequences of COVID-19. Our membership primarily consists of small and medium-sized businesses. We do have two large corporate sponsors, which are UPS and ICICI Bank. In terms of individual professionals, we have bankers, lawyers, and CPAs and small business owners. So with that, I'm going to welcome our moderator for the evening, who is Grace Multani, our chamber secretary and prior chamber vice president. Over to you, Grace.
Thank you so much, Anita. Very good evening to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Like Anita said, I'm Grace Multani. I've been member of GIACC for several years and on the board for the last 3. And it is my privilege to be moderating this very timely webinar as all our business owners struggle through hopefully the last quarter of the pandemic. So welcome, and like you, I look forward to our discussion today. So I'd like to first just spend a minute to let you know what the format is. I'll introduce each of the speakers. Each of them have 5 to 7 minutes of remarks on the topic after their introduction. And then hopefully in 20 minutes, we'll open the floor to questions. All the panelists were very much in agreement that for this program, the devil is in the details. So want to leave ample time for questions, but we do have a large group. So we will try our best to get through as many as we can. While we have the introductions and presentations and throughout the meeting, please keep your video and audio on mute and video disabled. When we do open the floor for questions, just go ahead and press your click chat the chat button, and just send your question to me. I think I'm identified as Grace's iPhone, so you'll be able to locate that for me. Again, we are recording this whole webinar in its entirety. It'll be available tomorrow on giacc.net, not giacc.com. And so if you miss something, you always have the opportunity to go on our website. We'll try to close 10 minutes before 7, so you all can join your families back for dinner. And in the end, it'll be Raj, our president, who will close it out for us. In the meantime, he's playing our Zoom engineer, so thank you, Raj. So without further delay, it's truly my pleasure to introduce our first featured speaker, Mr. Brian Cohen. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Quantum Bank and has been their CEO since 2017. He's a Bachelor of Science from Georgia State University and Master's in Finance from University of Oregon. He is on the board of the Gwinnett Chamber. He is on the board of the Georgia Bankers Association. And so it is, again, my pleasure to introduce Brian. Brian, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much. And we very much appreciate the opportunity this evening to be able to address some of the questions with our presentation. Again, my name is Brian Cohen. I am the CEO of Quantum National Bank. We really first want to thank Raj behind the scenes and the two ladies that spoke before me, Grace and Anita, for giving us this opportunity. Also, a shout out to Vishali Joshi, who works at Quantum as one of our great lenders and I know is involved in the organization. And many of you may know the chairman of the board of Quantum, Dr. Nilagaru, who founded the bank 25 years ago. So a little bit about Quantum and a little bit about PPP, and then I'm going to turn it over to two able co-workers. First, Quantum is now a 25-year-old bank. We are by a significant amount the largest South Asian bank inside the state of Georgia, and have been very successful and profitable, but significantly understand the South Asian community and business banking extremely well. For any of you looking at a PPP round 2 or 3 loan, whichever you might call it at this point, I would strongly encourage you to focus on working with either Quantum, but more importantly, with a community bank. Even with this program so far, a large majority of the loans being made are being made by community banks. The large national banks struggle with the kind of customer service required to make these kinds of loans. So again, I would encourage you to stick with the community banking arena. As a little bit of background on what Quantum has done so far, in 2020, we made 1,020, that's 1,020 PPP loans. When you look at how many we made and the size of those loans based on our balance sheet, we were one of the top 10% PPP lenders inside of the entire country. Additionally, so far in this current round, Quantum has over 600 loans that we have made or are in process at some level. Not all of those have been approved by Quantum or SBA yet, but we have a tremendous amount of folks that we've already been working with and I think have a very refined process. One question I know that's been asked, and I do want to make sure everybody is aware, you do not need to be a customer currently of Quantum National Bank to get a PPP loan. We would hope if you do business with us with a PPP loan that you look at it as an opportunity for us to earn future business, but future business also is not a requirement. So please know that as you hear the rest of this presentation. The other two co-workers that I have with me this evening are our Chief Operations Officer and our Chief Deposit Officer, John Bramblett and Tyler Phillips. Both of these gentlemen have been in the trenches on a day-to-day basis, answering a lot of questions as it relates to PPP. I may jump in and try to answer something, but they are going to try to focus on answering your questions this evening. With that, I'll turn it back over. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. So yes, next I'm happy to introduce John Bramlett. He joined Quantum Bank in 2017 and is currently the Chief Operating Officer, as Brian mentioned. He's graduate of Stonia Graduate School of Banking at Georgetown University and has been in banking for 34 years. I was going to ask John a fun fact, but then after 34 years in banking, I didn't know. He currently manages all lending functions at the bank, including the SBA, commercial real estate, and residential construction and development. I have a feeling John's been a very busy man this year. So John, take it away. The mic will be yours in a second.
Great. Thank you, Grace. Yes, we have been extremely busy here at Quantum. At Quantum, we are, as Brian said, a 25-year-old community bank, and one of our specialties is SBA lending. We are a preferred provider for the SBA division at Quantum, which means that we do a lot of our own processing internally before we send it to the SBA. So very aware of all the programs going on with SBA and have been intimately involved with the PPP process the first time and this time as well. A couple of other things that the CARES Act did outside of PPP before I jump into the rest of PPP. The CARES Act also revamped what's called the 7A program, which is a program that allows you to borrow with a guarantee from the federal government, which makes it very attractive to a bank. Much like the PPP loan is. But with the update to the CARES Act, the SBA has waived what they call their guarantee fee. That's usually a pretty significant fee that the SBA requires, but they've waived all of those for loans that close between now or February 1st and September. So that is a huge opportunity for new clients looking at buying a facility or financing or maybe refinancing a facility that they own or occupy. The other opportunity in there is that the SBA has offered to pay 6 months of payments for you. So once you close a loan in that time frame, the SBA will pay 6 months of payments for you. In addition, Quantum has offered some incentives related to the additional closing cost you may have, and Quantum has some very attractive incentives on that for you. So if you're looking for an SBA loan for your owner-occupied building outside of PPP, we certainly have the opportunities to talk to you there and have some great promotions going as part of the CARES Act and some additional incentives that Quantum is offering as well. So back to PPP. PPP, if you used PPP on the first round, you have to have used that for the purposes that you were supposed to be qualified for the second round. It is the Paycheck Protection Program. So most of it is geared toward payroll and saving those payrolls and helping you pay payroll during the pandemic. The loan is calculated solely off of payrolls. It's 2.5 times for most companies of your average monthly payroll is how the loan amount's calculated with that. There are some instances, restaurants, hotels, that can go up to 3.5 times your average monthly payroll, but most of it's 2.5 times your monthly payroll. So you've had to have used it properly the first time to be eligible for the second time. You don't have to have had a loan the first time to be eligible for the second time. If you had a loan the first time, you don't necessarily have to use the same lender. Maybe you used a lender you weren't very happy with the level of service that they provided. So you can choose a different lender. We've seen several clients this round that we did not provide their first round of PPP loan for, but they've come to us for the second round. All we need in that process is your amount, your loan amount, and the SBA number for that. We have an automated system that we can help walk you through to input all that. The SBA is checking things like that. This time there are a little bit more checks and balances this round than there were the first time. So they're checking, making sure that that money was used correctly the first time if the forgiveness has been applied for, and that you've got identified your account number and the loan amount on the second round there. The other big piece that I want to mention before I turn it over to Tyler here is that it does expire March 31st. In the first round, there was a lot of anxiety because money ran out. The government has assured us that money won't run out this time, but there is a defined time frame for it. March 31st of this year is when the program is to sunset at this point. It could be extended, but it would require an act of Congress to do that. But right now, the program is open and we are taking applications daily. We have a automated system that you can log into and fill out your application easily, upload the files and the documentation that's needed there, and have a team of people to help support you through that process so that you're not doing it by yourself. We've got a team of people that are dedicated to help you there, and we're excited to do that. So with that, I'll stop and let Tyler talk a little bit more about the program and then we'll answer some questions down the road.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, John. So yes, my final panelist, my pleasure to introduce him, Tyler Phillips. Tyler's held various positions in banking since 2005, and he's been with Quantum since 2008. He's the Chief Deposit Officer at Quantum and an experienced banker with also much demonstrated history of working in the banking industry. Tyler has an MBA from Auburn College of Business and an LSU Graduate School of Banking. I don't know how you, kind of snuck in there. I went to Michigan, Tyler, which means nothing in my household because I'm married to a Florida Gator. So, well, that season's done, right? But anyways, I am so looking forward to hearing what you have to add to our PPP loan discussion. Take it away in a second, Tyler.
Well, thank you so much, Grace. So as John mentioned, we do have, I'm going to kind of go to the bottom bullet point first, since that's where John left off. We do have a dedicated team of bankers here at Quantum that are helping guide folks through the PPP process. We did choose this round to do the PPP process different than we did the first round. This round, we are processing all of our PPP applications through a portal. There is the email address there, ppp@quantumbank.com, that you can email us if you'd like that link to the portal, or you can call us at 678-889-4505. And we have a dedicated team of bankers that are here that phone number will ring, and we will answer the call and go through as best as we can any questions that you have. The other bullet points here that everybody can see actually has to do with some of the main questions that we are asked when people contact us to apply for a PPP loan. One of the things is you must show this time versus last time a 25% reduction in your gross receipts. You can either show that annually, or what the guidance states is you must pick a quarter, so Q2 of 2019 to Q2 of 2020. You cannot pick, Q3 of 19 and compare it to Q4 of 2020. It has to be a comparison quarter. And as we've mentioned before, this is a Paycheck Protection Program loan. How we calculate the amount of your average monthly payroll has to be with payroll that you have paid in either 2019 or 2020. You can pick whichever year you'd like. That calculation is built off the 2.5 times with certain industries. If you are in the hotel industry or hospitality industry, our system automatically makes the calculation of the 3.5 times that the program allows you to do. This round is different than the last round. As Brian mentioned earlier, we'd love for you guys to become a Quantum customer. However, we are doing the funding of the PPP loan into a dedicated PPP deposit account here at Quantum for you to access to be able to make your payroll. But that's more of the highlights of the things that we have come in contact with. And I know as of late, one of the questions is for new businesses. So one thing that is not on the bullet point that I did want to mention to everyone is that you must have been in business February 15th of 2020. If you were not in business before that date, then you would not qualify for this round of Paycheck Protection loan. But I'd love to hear any other questions that any folks have out there. Other than that, I'll turn it back over to Grace. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tyler. Looking forward to everybody's questions. Just please start firing them away. I'll start with a general question. How does a banker help an applicant? I mean, seems like it's a very automated process. So do people just get a site and just go and start plugging away, or that relationship does come handy if you have a banker that you work with?
So bankers they do need to be careful about the help that they provide. The help that I'm talking about that we can provide is walking the customer through how to apply on our portal. The specific questions to like the gross receipts or revenue, those are questions that are probably best answered by the applicant's CPA. So, you know, the banker should be walking through how to apply, but the banker should allow and ask the customer to ask their CPA for any specific advice on revenues or payroll, things of that nature.
Gotcha. So you kind of answered my next question that I got. How do the CPAs help out? What about forgiveness? Can you describe that a little bit? The forgiveness part of these loans, that's all, you know, kind of confusing. What's forgiven, what's not forgiven, what's the interest rate being charged? Do you have any idea?
Sure, I can help with some of that. The forgiveness is in process now. If you have a loan that's $150,000, the most recent update to the CARES Act gives you a very simplified process to apply for. It is a simple application that you can attest to, that you spent the money as you agreed to up front, and that you are retaining the documentation for that. You don't have to present any documentation to the SBA or to the bank for forgiveness. You certainly have to go back to the bank you got your original PPP loan for to apply for forgiveness with them. And each bank may have a different way that they're processing that. But there is a very simplified process for just an application that you attest that you spent the money as you agreed that you would up front for loans under $150,000.
Okay.
There is for loans over $150,000, you do have to provide some additional documentation that the SBA reviews and the bank that you got your PPP loan for reviews as well. There is no real deadline for it. The deadline is a year from when you received your loan. So if you received your loan last April, this April, you will start having payments on that loan that will come up, that will be paid over a 40 period. So the SBA desires for you to apply for forgiveness. If you've not applied for forgiveness, I would encourage you to do that now. But when you hit that 1 year mark, you will start having payments on that. Everyone's at 1% interest on that. If you get full forgiveness, that is forgiven out there, but it is amortized over a 48-month payback period, amortization coming from that standpoint. So it's—
Then I have just a quick follow-up question on that. Somebody's saying, what is the connection of the forgiveness on the first loan to applying for the second loan?
There's not. You don't have to have already applied for forgiveness to apply for a new PPP loan. So there's really no connection to that. I would encourage you to apply for forgiveness now if you've not done that already, but you do not have to have already applied for forgiveness or have been forgiven to apply for the second round PPP loan.
Thank you. So I have another question. It says, when you said gross receipts, is it what's billed during the quarter or actually received during the quarter?
So clearly how the guidance is written, it's quite interesting. How they're describing gross receipts is total income plus cost of goods sold, not to include capital gains. There is additional guidance that's out there that goes into more specific detail given the question. That is something that I don't have the answer to right this moment, but it is a question that is legitimate and coming up, and we have to dig down deep into the guidance. We are given probably every 5 to 6 days new question and answers from the SBA and guidance. So just like the first PPP round, things are changing. So as John mentioned earlier, yes, they do have the date that the portal is supposed to close, but they could extend it by an act of Congress. Well, there's also other things that will probably change in the course of the next 2 months that this portal will be open for PPP loans.
I don't know how you remember all that, but You must be doing it all the time. So I have another question.
Answering
you
it,
only-
answering it 20 times a day helps.
Oh man, it's been a year for you, hasn't it? But good year, hopefully. So another question, that if you have only 1 to 3 quarters with 25% less gross receipts, can we apply for the PPP round 2?
It would depend on a couple of things. One is you have to make the comparable quarter to the previous year. The only time that you can make a comparable quarter within 2020 is if you started in 2020. So if you started in that, let's just say January 1 of 2020, then the guidance states that you can use one of the latter 3 quarters to compare to that first quarter. But you know, you have to be careful with the comparison. So if you're having trouble picking a comparison, that's that CPA question that we were talking about earlier. We need to compare it to a comparable quarter 2 to 2, you know, quarter 2 to quarter 2, or you need to look at it annually, 2019 compared to 2020 year to date. And so, you know, there's a lot of questions coming up. For instance, as an example, we had a comment today where they were actually in business 2019, but really had not started, you know, earning revenues. Well, unfortunately, they were in business 2019. They have to compare a quarter in 2020 to 2019, and they had no quarter in 2019. So there is, that might be one of those things that does change. There might be additional guidance. And I think one of the things that we need to stress is stay in touch with your banker about guidance, because it could change to where someone could qualify.
Gotcha. Thank you. Very good follow-up question. Somebody asked, is the application process then simple for previous PPP recipients, or more complicated actually because of all the comparisons? And
it's comparable to what it was the last time. It's a very similar application to what it was the first time to this time. So it's not any more complicated at all than it was from the first round. So.
Gotcha.
Grace, I would point out one thing too. One question that we've gotten a lot when we're talking about the 25%. 25% is a bright line for the SBA. If you're down 23% in comparable quarters, you're not eligible. It has to be 25% or greater. So we've seen a lot of clients that are close, but close doesn't count in this regard. It has to be 25% or more to be eligible.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. This might be a bit complicated, but I'll go ahead and ask, and feel free to defer any of the questions if you know, you feel like more is needed from your standpoint to answer them. What if a company that has a PPP loan is being acquired or merged? What do they need to do?
Normally, the PPP loan is owned by the original company. So the company that received the PPP loan is responsible for the forgiveness of the PPP loan. They're not transferable. You can't move it from one entity to another. So if company A is selling to company B and company A had a PPP loan, company A needs to apply for that forgiveness. And that needs to happen separate to the transaction.
Fair enough. That sounds like the very common sense approach that would be taken. Thank you. So I have a follow-up question to that, but a little bit different. So let me try to decipher this question. If the business is no goods sold, but private security guard services payrolls that provide business protection security services, can that business qualify for PPP? I'm just wondering if this is a goods versus services. Just please feel free to qualify that question better if it needs to be.
And I hate to defer it back to the CPA, but those specific questions like that, that's why very early on we talked about what the banker's role is. The banker is to walk them through the actual application process. When it comes down to the data that is going into the application, it would be best if that were certified by a CPA and not the banker. The banker is the conduit between the customer and the federal government to apply for Paycheck Protection Program money.
Great. I think this question was answered already, but I'll just make sure. If I didn't apply for the PPP in 2020, can I apply for it now?
Yes, you
Yes.
can.
And that was a clarification that I wanted to make about
Yeah.
the 25% gross receipts. If this is your first PPP loan, and I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, is it all or just under 150 where they don't have to provide the revenue number?
Under 150, I believe.
150, I think, yeah. And so that I can clarify that and shoot that back out to you guys. But that is something that if this is your first draw and you did not get it in 2020, then that revenue number is not needed.
Thank you. Couple of questions. I'm going to combine them. So one part of that is, from what time after I fill out an application, how long is it taking to get the loan? And also, I think a tie-up question to that is, what type of activity are you seeing with the PPP applications? Is it the same level as before? So I think kind of the same questions. What is the probability of people who are applying getting it, and how long is it taking?
The SBA is taking a little bit longer this time because they do have some of those stop gaps and checks that they were doing this time than they were before. Once you send the application to us, we run through the application and confirm that all the information is there and approve it from our side. If we've got all the information, we're looking at applications that we received today. So we're caught up with all the prior applications that we've got. We may have several that we've sent back to borrowers to correct. So then it's up to the client to provide us the new information, and the time frame can vary from there. But we have seen some applications that have come in yesterday that we have submitted to SBA today. So it can go as quickly as a day in moving that process. The SBA is taking up to 48 hours to respond to us, whereas last time it was somewhat instantaneous. But so it may be a couple of days before we get confirmation from the SBA of their approval from that standpoint. From there, it's taken another day or so to complete the loan documents and have them signed electronically, and then for us to fund that account here. So a few days is the entire process. It's not a lengthy process, but I will say that it is on the client a lot of times to provide information to us. If they don't quickly reply with the information that we need or the question that we may have, that does slow it down.
Gotcha. So I have another question. I'm not sure exactly who could answer this one. So probably you. What are the supporting documents for eligibility to show gross receipts if we don't have our 2020 tax returns, kind of done yet?
We have seen our customers provide P&Ls. The P&L is something that I've seen used most. But I think that is a sufficient, probably the easiest documentation for somebody to provide to show the revenue. If it's not, the P&L obviously of the quarter that they're comparing, then showing their year-to-date profit loss statement from 19 and 20. That's probably the easiest documentation to provide.
So this is a question I have. So how does the priority go? I mean, does it go by size of loan, number of employees, or is it just literally when did you submit the application?
That is it. It's when you submitted the application, and the SBA, if they've got some questions or some other information that they need, that slows it down. But it's based on submitting. When we submit the application in, and then they've got 48 hours to send it back. It's just in that order of submission.
Gotcha. I have one more question. Somebody said, one second. Anil had a question, but I have.
I mean, I can speak up if needed, Grace.
Yeah, Anil, go ahead, ask, please.
So for self-employed people or very small companies, hey Tyler, who are not, don't do P&Ls and kind of work on end of the year tax, pulling together everything. But if there has been a substantial decline in revenue, what kind of certification or information is needed? Is a CPA's statement saying that there has been a decline and here is what it is would be adequate, or how do we establish that?
Yeah, you can provide us what you have. I mean, there has been people have provided their 2019, tax returns, and I know that not everyone has filed their 2020 tax returns. I mean, that hasn't happened yet. But we can take a look at whatever it is that you can provide, because remember, we're trying to prepare you for the forgiveness phase. Yes, we want to get you the money that you're needing, but we're getting this documentation in the front so that when forgiveness comes, we have it so we can provide it and prove to the federal government that is, you had that 25% reduction in gross receipts. So, you can provide what you have, but we're just trying to get the documentation to support it so that we have it in the forgiveness phase that should happen in the next, 2 to 3 months after you've received the loan.
So there's no specific form or a accountant statement or certified financials or anything that needs to be submitted.
No, because you're signing an attestation saying that you had a reduction in gross receipts.
Okay. Good, thank you.
I think this question may have been answered, but let's make sure because I think it's an important one. Two sort of kind of tied questions. Do I have to use my lender where I have my bank account, or if I got PPP in round one, do I need to use the same lender? And so somebody asked, we got the PPP loan from PayPal last time. Can we apply through your bank for the second round, or should we go back to PayPal again?
You can go wherever you want to with it. It does not have to be the same lender that you used on the first round for the second round. So it's totally up to you. The only bits of information that you're going to need is your account number and your loan amount as you move forward into the second one from the first one. But you can go anywhere you want to for the second one. It does not have to be the same person you got it from the first time.
Just to clarify, the only time you have to go back to the previous lender is only during forgiveness. You have to be forgiven by who you got the first round for. Quantum can't do that for you.
Yeah, that would be interesting, right? Oh yeah, that's not the business. Gotcha. No, fair enough. That makes sense. Yeah, I think there are a lot of questions on forgiveness, and one of them is, and again, we have, is the forgiveness process the same for the second loan, or is something different coming up with that one because of all the learnings from part one?
We don't know at this point. We've not completed forgiveness on round one first, and then I'm sure we'll have additional guidance coming up on what forgiveness looks like on round two after it closes, but we have no idea what it will look like. I hope it'll be similar to what it was, to be easy in that process, but we just don't have any idea what that'll look like going forward.
Got it. And so one of the questions, and I think this is probably question number one, how do I know if I even qualify for a PPP loan? Just apply? Other than the 25%? Or maybe you can go over a couple of those rules again for us?
I would start with the 25%. That right there is a hard line number, as John had mentioned before. And then the next is payroll. Look at your payroll. I mean, then that's the second. You have to provide payroll information over to the bank to be able to qualify for your average monthly payroll, which will be multiplied into your loan amount. So I would say start with the 25% and then look at your payrolls and then apply. Once you've done the 25%, I would say that's the qualifier to go ahead and start the application process. And then the application process is a very good process that we have that actually goes through it with you and kind of walks you through everything needed, including what is needed to upload. If you need a 941 form or a payroll summary, you can upload those things in there so that the underwriter who's looking at it can tie it all back to your average monthly payroll and make sure that it equates to that loan amount and get you approved.
Got it. And again, it'll be our tax professionals who can answer, or maybe you already know this, all this money that people got, how is it being taxed? I mean, do you even know if we have guidelines for it?
Not being taxed. No,
Not being
I mean, you can double check with your accountant on it, but all the guidance that we have shows that it's not being taxed. The money that you received in the PPP is not part of your calculation going forward, and it's not part of your tax bill for that year.
Fantastic.
If I could jump in real quick, there was also, and I think it was addressed earlier perhaps, but there's a chat question about when to apply by. I want to sort of address that with a couple of things. The current application deadline is March 31st. That said, and I think as John and Tyler have tried to keep reiterating, the rules of engagement with SBA continually are changing. So we know how much money is there now. It appears that the money won't run out, but there are no guarantees. The rules of engagement could keep changing over time. The program could get extended. You would be amazed at the amount of correspondence we're continually getting from SBA, updating us on how to interpret the existing program as they move forward, tied in with all of the things going on in Congress, where there's some additional things that may cause things to change. So with whomever you choose to go down the road with a PPP loan, if you do, please make sure it's somebody you can get a hold of and that you communicate with, because whatever the rules are today, I can assure you they will be different.
Sure. I'm going to close out with one question, and then I'll give Brian, Tyler, and John the opportunity to maybe add to anything that people haven't asked or they should know. I know, Brian, you just gave a couple more pointers. So any difference between big banks, small banks, does it matter? So we'll close it out just with that last question, but take a couple of minutes each, or a minute, whatever you need to share if anything we should know that we haven't asked. And we appreciate your time very much. And then I'll take it back and close it out with Raj.
I think what Brian said is critical, to make sure you can get in touch with somebody that you're dealing with. Make sure that you can get them on the phone or get them via email and have a conversation with them, because there are some things that you just can't figure out sometimes, that you need to talk to somebody. Make sure that you've got somebody that can be responsive to you, and that's the biggest piece in selecting your vendor for this next PPP loan.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense to me. I want to talk to somebody. Fantastic. John, any additional, Tyler, any additional? Brian, and anybody, anything else you guys want to add? I'm just telling all three of you. Otherwise, we'll pass it on to Raj, and he can thank you all properly as president of GIACC.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Raj, I pass on the mic to you. Thank you so much for keeping us going here with everything you did behind the scenes. Thanks, Raj.
Thank you, Grace. Good evening, everybody. I am Raj, SK Raj, the president of GIACC. Thank you all for joining this webinar. We sincerely hope it was informative and useful for you. We did see a lot of questions from you. I know many of your questions probably have not got answered for want of time, but please be assured that the entire webinar as a recording will be available in our website, www.giacc.net. Again, that's www.giacc.net. If you have any follow-up questions to the panelists, please email them to giaccadmin@pro-apg.com, and we'll be sure to may I request everyone to mute your phone and your camera? There's some feedback. Thank you, appreciate it. So if you have any follow-up questions for the panelists, please go ahead and send it to us at giaccadmin@proapg.com. One of the questions that was asked during the webinar was, how do we apply? Where is the link to the bank and the website? We will try to post a flyer from Quantum National Bank in our website tomorrow, so you can see that information. You can also visit their website, and you can go there and then reach out to any of the folks who were in the panel today. I'd like to start thanking Quantum National Bank, our event partner, and the folks who represent Quantum National Bank: Brian Cohen, the CEO, John Bramblett, the Chief Operating Officer, and Tyler Phillips, the Chief Deposit Officer, for giving us their time and sharing all the information on PPP Round 2 you heard today. I would also like to thank Vaishali Joshi of Quantum National Bank for getting all these senior executives on this webinar for us. I thank you again. Thank you, Grace, for moderating this webinar so graciously. You wouldn't believe this is the first time Grace is moderating. I think she did a wonderful job. Thank you very much, Grace. Please visit our website for details on upcoming events. You can also see the recordings of all our past webinars. We had a series of webinars in 2020, everything from COVID related to businesses, how they are managing and what next, how things will change in Canada, in US, and all of that. So we have a lot of events that we have had. We will be having many more events this year too. So I encourage you to visit our website often and see what events are there. All these webinars are free for the community. We also encourage you to become members of our GIACC, Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. We are all about networking and promoting trade and commerce between Georgia and India, and also for our members. So we really encourage you to become either an individual member or a corporate member, and you will see all those details at www.giacc.net as well. Again, thank you one and all. Wish you all a very good night, and for those all of you applying for the PPP loan round 2, all the best. Thank you. Good night.